And now it's time for the Aiven session for the AI Deployment Summit, where we'll learn how organizations working on generative AI also rely on an integrated data platform to create innovative AI apps while keeping their private data safe. Our speaker this morning is Francesco Tiziat, Staff Developer Advocate at Aiven. Francesco, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. We're glad to have Francesco with us, and he joins us directly from Europe, so we're even particularly happy to have him join us today. Francesco empowers developers and data professionals for AI projects with open source and cloud services expertise. In fact, he has great experience across all the top open source data projects, including Apache Kafka, PostgreSQL, and Cassandra. His session this morning is entitled Adopt GenAI with Robust Security and Data Management. Today, Francesco's here to help us evaluate GenAI's opportunities and risks, especially when it comes to using open source and cloud services. And for the payoff, he'll also show us how to design an architecture that balances GenAI's business needs with your needs to enforce data security and implement data management. So great content and a great demo in store. One last note, you can download today's slides. Just click the big red button under the view screen. We've also got some other valuable downloads that you can take a look at with just one click. And ask a question. Feel free in that slot right under the view screen. We love to submit those to our speakers and make sure that we get answers to you. So with that, let me turn to Francesco and tell us about how to adopt GenAI with robust security and data management.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And really enthusiastic to be here. What we will see in the next 25 minutes is how companies or how you can adopt generative AI in your business while minimizing the risk and maximizing the benefits. In the agenda of today, first of all, let's check where we are at with generative AI. Let's briefly see what is the landscape of generative AI as of now and what innovation we had in the last few weeks. Then we will dig into why companies should invest or are investing into generative AI, trying to understand all the opportunities, but also try to evaluate the risks. And then we will move into kind of the meat of the talk, where we will discuss how to bring the data that our companies are generating into a format, into a place where generative AI can take them and make use of this kind of beautiful data. And finally, we need to increase the size of the picture because data is just one point in the generative AI solution. So we will see how the data side of things fits the overall GenAI architecture. So let's start. Let's start by checking out where we are at this point in time with generative AI. And I want to tell you one thing about this, the next few slides. I want to tell you that probably by the time that we will finish this session and you will open the browser, the situation might already be changed. Why is that? Well, because the pace of change happening in the generative AI landscape is incredible. Every hour, every day, every few minutes, there is a news regarding generative AI that pops up. It's from all the major players in the tech market, but also from new players in the AI landscape. If you just follow a popular website like TechCrunch, you can see every day new news about big players, small players, old players, and new players popping up with innovation in this space. So what is the generative AI landscape? It's basically an ever-evolving landscape where we have a fast pace of innovation and we have new foundation models that are coming up with new capabilities, new integration patterns, and they are being released on a weekly basis. On the other side, we have new and old, big and small vendors that are trying to simplify the adoption of generative AI by offering new functionalities, new services, new integration that are aimed to cut down the time to adoption. And what we are assisting at is a rising in the generative AI adoption. The number that you see on screen, 92%, was given by Sam Altman in the latest keynote of the OpenAI Summit. He told during the keynote that already 92% of the 500 Fortune companies are already using generative AI in their day-to-day work. So this is the landscape of generative AI now. Why are companies and people willing to adopt generative AI? Let's try to understand the benefits and the risks. Let's start by understanding the opportunities. I took this graph from Gartner website, and it's extremely interesting to see why companies are trying to adopt generative AI initiatives. The main driver is customer experience and retention, is to provide the customer tailored service that makes them feel really at home in order to increase the adoption of the tools and the retention of the customers within the companies. But then it's also about growing revenue, discovering new opportunities that generative AI is unlocking. And of course, there is always the solid base of trying to reduce cost and ensure that the business can still run as it is. If you just take an example for using AI in incident management to improve incident management, for example, by applying generative AI to collect information from various sources, trying to summarize what has been happening in the last 2 weeks or in the last few moments about an incident, and giving to the team that is responsible of managing the incident already a lot of insights about what has been happening so far. With just one use case, I've been telling you how a single company can increase the customer experience by reducing the downtime, can increase the revenue by probably pushing up the SLAs, can reduce the cost of downtime and also of the people that have to manage the incident because you give them insights instead of having them to investigate on what has been happening in the last 2 weeks. And then you ensure that the business keeps running just with one use case. But this is more or less the golden part of the picture. What about the other part? What about the risks of adopting generative AI? Well, when we are adopting generative AI, we are adopting this kind of new machine learning models, new AI models that seems magical, but on the other side, we don't fully understand how they work. There is not enough transparency, specifically if we are not training these generative AI models ourselves, into understanding what is behind, how this model works. And where in the past we had a human with a human brain trying to understand if the request that was coming was valid for the use case that we were trying to solve or not, now we are dealing with a model. And the lack of transparency needs to be addressed, needs to be evaluated in order to understand if the model is good enough for our purposes or not. The same for accuracy. We're used to think about computers as a perfect science. 1 + 1 is always equal to 2 for a computer. But with generative AI, we need to give a little bit of flexibility and freedom to this model to basically change slightly the wording in order to make a conversation feel not always the same. But this, of course, impacts accuracy. So again, we need to evaluate how much accuracy we want to have in our models in order to always give replies that can vary a bit, but are always in the context of what we want to talk with customers. And then there is the risk about bias. Basically here, with generative AI and with large language models, there is the problem of that usually we don't train the entire model. We usually use models that are pre-trained by a vendor, by a third party, and then we apply what is called fine-tuning in order to let the model understand about our business. So we cannot control the entire training data set, but we can control what we train with our data set. So understanding and evaluating and managing the bias is something that we can somehow control. But the same problem with training data set is about understanding if the sources that were used to train the model are following the right copyrights and following the right rights for intellectual property. Again, this is something that deals with the trust that you have in the vendor that you're using, that you're selecting for your generative AI journey. Then, when talking about replacing a human with some sort of a model, we have seen already a lot of use cases of generative AI being misused. Because whenever before we had a human trying to understand if a certain request was valid or not, now we have a model. And we need to put limits in the amount of replies that the model could give, depending on how much valid a certain question for our business it is. Finally, there are questions about sustainability of the generative AI adoption, because it's not only about sustainability in the economics for the company adopting it, but it's also about sustainability of how these models are built and the amount of resources that are needed in order to build these systems. These are kind of the overall risks about generative AI. But let's start talking about something a little bit more sensitive for companies, which are the data risk of adopting generative AI. Because when we start adopting generative AI in our companies, we can no longer limit ourselves to use the pre-trained models. We need to start feeding those models with the most precious thing that we have in our companies, which is our data. And when you start exposing your own data, you may start exposing data that is private, confidential, commercially valuable, or regulated. And if you don't do your homework well, exposing this data to a generative AI could in turn expose this data to your customer or to the wider public. And if you don't do your homework well, this could result not only in a decrease of the trust that the customers have in you, but you could also have problems with, for example, breaching regulations. And this can have also an impact on your finances and the trust of your company. But then let's say that, exposing the private data is something that we can think about and prevent somehow. The other part of the journey about data and generative AI is that, like a human needs to have kind of the 360 views about what a customer has been doing in the last few minutes or days, the same thing goes for generative AI. Generative AI needs to have a complete picture of what the customer was trying to achieve in order to, for example, give a reply in a sort of a chatbot experience, in order to not just reply with a standard reply about how our product can work, but give some sort of detailed reply based on, for example, the usage pattern of the user in our tool in the last 2 minutes. So it's really needed that we feed generative AI with a complete picture of what a specific customer was trying to achieve that probably is coming from 20 different sources in our data landscape. We will have different sources which are silos or data and are perfect to fulfill needs of sorting one specific business problem. But on the other side, we need to take all these golden pieces coming from different technologies and glue them together to give to generative AI the 360 view about what is happening. And we have also another problem, that all of this needs to happen in almost near real time. Because the expectancy now is that if I do something in a tool and then I interact with a chatbot, the chatbot will need to know what I was trying to perform 2 minutes ago. We cannot wait 1 day or few hours before moving the data around. We need up-to-date data that is coming from all the sources that we have around. And finally, another risk is that basically we are spending a lot of energy and time and probably money in order to build a customized experience for our user. But what if we find what in AI terms is called hallucination? Hallucination is where the generative AI model doesn't have a proper answer, doesn't have a proper knowledge about the questions that it got asked. So it starts inventing a new reply. In such cases, we basically create a really, really bad customer experience because the model is just generating something out of the blue. So we need to prevent or to minimize the risk of hallucination because that will drive a really bad customer experience. So how can we address those data risks? Well, in order to solve the problem about security, we need to enforce policies that limit the amount of sensible data, that obfuscate the data where it's needed, that aggregate the data up in order to mask a single user behavior. When we talk about collecting the data from various systems in real time, we need to adopt streaming. As streaming technologies allow us to take the data from all the various sources where the data is stored and present on the other side to generative AI where the data is needed in streaming mode, in near real time. And finally, we want to reduce hallucination, hopefully eliminate hallucination, by adopting the techniques that are popping up every day in the current AI landscape. And the popular technique that we have now is called retrieval augmented generation, RAG, that allow us to basically query our data sources, passing the embeddings, which is a vector representation of the question, for example, that a customer gave, and retrieve from those data sources information about what is similar to the question that got asked, in order to increase the knowledge of the model about what, for example, the user was trying to do in the last few minutes. So with all these benefits and risk in mind, let's try to design a data solution that will enable us to adopt generative AI. And let's start from the end of the journey. So let's start from the end user. What we will see here is an example of a chatbot experience, and we will design the data architecture behind it. So we have the end user, which is the end of the game. And then next to the end user, we will probably have our generative AI chatbot that will start interacting with the user. Now, what's on the opposite side of the screen? On the opposite side of the screen is our data assets. This could be relational databases, operational databases that we use day in, day out. Could be NoSQL databases where we store other kind of data for our business. It could be document databases and another huge variety of different data assets that we have around. So what we said before is we need to collect all this information from these various sources, and we need to do that in real time. So what we need in the middle is a streaming platform that is able to collect this information and possibly also push the information back if we need fast feedback loops. But then just collecting the information is not enough. What we need as well is something that allows us to reshape, join, obfuscate, aggregate up the information that we receive. And also that doesn't add any delay in the process. So we need a streaming computation engine being able to talk with the streaming platform and reshape the data how we need. Once we have this set of tools, we have all we need to basically interact with the generative AI chatbot. We can have the generative AI chatbot asking questions, and we can have the streaming platform or the streaming computational engine replying with the two methods that are used as of now to provide information to the generative AI chatbot, which are either fine-tuning, uploading a bunch of data into a specific folder to let the generative AI understand about our business, or with prompt assembly, where we basically feed the generative AI chatbot context with information about the specific user that the chatbot is having an interaction with. And then we can also do what we called before, the RAG, the RAG, in order to provide even more context, more tailored to what the end user was trying to achieve or the question that the user was trying to ask. If you see this picture, you may think that there is a lot of stuff in here. And maybe you think that you will need to find all these components in 15 different vendors. There is a cool news for you. The cool news is that there is a company called Aiven that I work for. And what we do is we are the trusted open source data platform for everyone. We provide a platform that allows you to pick from the best of the open source. It allows you to have relational databases like Postgres and MySQL, streaming platform like Kafka, streaming event processing like Flink, analytical databases like ClickHouse. But it's not just a selection of tools, it's a platform. So you have one SLA, one vendor, one CLI, one Terraform provider that allows you to start up, change, modify, shut it down, all these different services. And we give you the freedom to select your own journey. So you can select, for example, where you want to host these services. And you can select all the major cloud provider, and you can move services between cloud providers. So it's all up to you. You can bring your data wherever it's needed. You can deploy it using the tools that you're using on a daily basis. Is that UI, is REST API, is it Terraform, is Kubernetes? We have a solution for that. But then we know that we are not alone in this kind of data world. So we build integrations between our tools that work, scale, and are secure, but also we build integration with other tools in the ecosystem that are needed, that are working within our clients. Such integrations go from authentication with all the major providers, data integration with all the major sources and sinks of information that you might have in your company, but also integrations to provide visibility about what is running and how it's running with all the major logging and metrics provider. So if now we do one step back and we go to our design of a solution, what we see is that Aiven pretty much fits all the pieces, because we have relational databases like Postgres, which can store and use the embeddings that generative AI talks. We have Cassandra for NoSQL. We have OpenSearch for document search. We have Kafka, which is with Kafka Connect, a beautiful tool to stream data in and out. And we have Apache Flink that allows you to reshape the data on the fly without adding any delay to the delivery of the data. I want now to focus on few of these tools to give you a little bit more information about them. The first one is Aiven for OpenSearch. People think that OpenSearch is a beautiful text search tool, but it's not only that. Recently, OpenSearch added a functionality to store vector information and perform similarity search. This works extremely well with generative AI models, because what generative AI models do is they speak embeddings, they speak vector information. So what you can do is store this vector information in OpenSearch and then query OpenSearch not only to retrieve data which is similar word by word, but also similar in context. The same for Postgres. Postgres is usually an operational database, but with a new extension called pgvector, allows you to store embeddings and again, perform similarity search. Just to give you an example, think about mixing standard SQL queries with vector search queries. Just think about the ability to say, I want to buy some shoes that are similar to this image that I'm pasting in the chat, but also that are in stock in a shop which is within 3 kilometers from my home. All of this is possible with just a SQL query to a Postgres database. And then we have ClickHouse, which is an analytical engine, and allows you to perform this kind of complex vector queries on a huge multitude of data that you are landing in your, for example, data lake. But then again, it's not only about single pillars, it's about integrations. And we have tools like Apache Kafka and Kafka Connect that are able to take the data from where it is to where it needs to be. And they are extremely able to do that in near real time and to scale as much as needed. Then the new addition is Apache Flink that allows you to transform the data on the fly. So all your needs of removing some data assets, to obfuscate other fields, to aggregate the data up in order to ensure that the single user activity cannot be tracked, or to join data coming from various sources together on the fly, it's all available in Apache Flink. Finally, Aiven for Redis, which usually is not an integration tool, but allows you to basically add the cherry on the cake, allows you to enable caching to achieve way better performance every time you need, and can natively be integrated with Apache Kafka to create this seamless caching on top of operational data or on top of embeddings data. The last part of the talk was about fulfilling the generative AI picture. The data aspect is only part of the full picture. Now, what we will see in the next couple of slides is how Aiven and the data architecture fits in the entire GenAI landscape. And I will give you a couple of examples with the two main cloud vendors. The first one is AWS. What you see on screen is a chatbot example. What we did is we took all our knowledge base and we used a Lambda function to invoke the Amazon Bedrock Titan embedding model in order to create embeddings on top of our knowledge base articles. And then we store them in OpenSearch. On the other side, we have a customer chatbot application that a customer can use in order to ask questions about our documentation. And we have a stack of the Lambdas, Fargate, and EKS that takes the request and invokes the same Bedrock Titan embedding model to generate the embedding related to the question. Then this kind of embedding is sent to OpenSearch. OpenSearch will perform a vector similarity search and reply with context that is fed back to the Bedrock model in order to generate a reply back to the customer. Now, the next slide will probably look a little bit familiar, but it's completely different. Because in the next slide, what we see is actually that we can completely change. This is basically the same solution using a completely new stack from Google. So instead of Lambdas, we are using Cloud Functions. Instead of Bedrock, we are using Vertex AI. We use Cloud Run and Google Kubernetes Engine instead of the counterparts on the Amazon side. Still, the data solution remains the same. The Aiven part remains at the center of this picture. What this shows you is that generative AI evolves. The data stays. And the interesting thing about Aiven is that we can basically take the data wherever you need. You can select your favorite generative AI partner, and we can assist you to take the data that you have wherever you need. I want now to showcase a quick demo of the Google solution. What you see on screen is the chatbot that we implemented using Vertex AI. So the first question is, can you tell me about Aiven for Kafka? This again will create embeddings, do a lookup into OpenSearch, which will retrieve the context to the Vertex AI that will generate the query. And then we have a follow-up question about Aiven for Kafka connectors for Postgres. And again, the Vertex AI will remember the context of the previous question, add some more context coming from OpenSearch, and reply with another custom reply. I want to finish up citing the same number that I was telling you at the beginning. 92% is the number of 500 Fortune companies that are already using generative AI in the day-to-day business. If you want to adopt generative AI, you want to adopt it for the good objectives, but in a safe, scalable, and easy to manage way. What we are doing at Aiven is we are bringing the data from where it is to where it needs to be and where you need to be. I want to finish up with giving you a couple of QR codes. The first one is if you want to book a demo, if you have seen anything interesting in the talk that I gave, and you want to know more about any of the solutions, just scan the QR code on the left. On the other side, if you want to go by yourself, just experience the beautiful UI, the beautiful REST API or Terraform provider that Aiven provides, and start your free trial and start services, check how the services are working, glue them together, and start building your generative AI solution. So with this, I'm concluding my session for today. The line goes back to Vince, and I'm happy to reply to any questions.
Francesco, really great. Wow, very rich look at the Aiven platform, and a really terrific way to see how customers are looking to use it and modernize and update their current infrastructure for GenAI. Really great session.
Thank you very much.
So luckily for us, you've left us a little bit of time for questions. With your permission, let's go to some questions.
Absolutely.
You know, Francesco, just to begin, quick question or comment here. The speaker mentioned several GenAI risks. How does Aiven help our databases and streaming platform address the data exposure risk?
So I believe there is part of it which is just good standard data practices. And that's one thing that I've been rediscovering in the last few months, is that we start relying on tools to do all our job, but sometimes the kind of old knowledge about designing data or about schema design, about creating views to mask some fields in order not to allow other consumers to view the sensitive information is becoming more and more relevant again. So what we do at Aiven in order to facilitate that, I would say we do a couple of things. First of all, we do, I believe, the maximum flexibility in order to build this kind of security layers yourself in the source tools. So for example, if you are using Postgres, you have all the benefits of creating as many users as you wish, setting really fine-tuned security settings for each of those users in order to tell what every single user can do and see. But then it's, again, not only about single point solution. I believe we give you all the tool set in order to build secure, comprehensive solutions that are merging a lot of data together. And we are trying to kind of remove the barriers. One of the barriers to provide the data to the consumer in a real time was that a lot of the data transformation, the data joining, was done in obscure Java or Scala code. Now with Aiven for Apache Flink, we are taking this to a layer of SQL. So SQL is the most known language across data professional. By allowing you to engage with your real-time data in SQL, we allow a huge volume of people to start building up-to-date real-time data pipelines, which is something new that is needed if we want to increase the adoption of generative AI and real-time data.
You know, Francesco, this has been a great conversation so far. Let's just drill a little bit into the architecture and the components that make Aiven's integrated data platform work. The commenter question here notes that you had a great chart about the Aiven data platform. Can you walk through the technology components that you've bundled together in Aiven's unified platform?
What we provide is the best of open source for all your data needs. Is it relational database? Postgres and MySQL cover all your operational data needs. And with those tools, you can also do analytics. If you want to push a little bit more on the analytics side, you can jump to ClickHouse, which is a pure analytical database. It is done for huge amount of data and can query seamlessly data that you are uploading to ClickHouse or that is sitting on an S3 bucket. So it can also query your data lake, and it can join information coming from different places together. The streaming bit. Now, the beauty of Kafka Connect and Flink is that you almost don't need to code. You write a series of JSON files, some SQL, and now you have a fully working, scalable, secure data pipeline that can take the data from all the various sources, them being with Aiven or outside of Aiven, and then send it to where it needs to be in real time. But then you may have also other needs like search engine like OpenSearch, time series databases, or visualization tools like Grafana or NoSQL data stores like Cassandra. You have a solution for every need of your data. But again, the interesting bit is on the single tools, but it's on the platform. And 99.99% SLA is something that is rare to find across all these tools. And the ability to seamlessly move from AWS to Google Cloud to UpCloud to Microsoft Azure, or to use the bring your own cloud in order to deploy the beauty of Aiven within your cloud account is something that is rare to find. And lastly, the ability to integrate the technologies together, to seamlessly move the data from Postgres to Kafka to ClickHouse to OpenSearch, to reshape the data and to take the data from where it is to where it's needed. With Aiven, you can support high quality, real-time, secure data transfer between all the tools that you have in-house. This is the power of an integrated data platform, is that you give to stakeholders the freedom to choose how they want to query, how they want to interact with the data. And you on the backend can just glue the data assets all together.
Really excellent. Really excellent. You know, I see time has just about expired, but one last question, Francesco, and this has been great. You know, so many features that we went over for Aiven. The quick question here says, can Aiven be deployed automatically, or do we need special skills to configure or implement?
If you have been using AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, probably you have seen the UI that those big vendors have. Aiven, in my opinion, has a more delightful experience console-wise. Our UI is way simpler to use. So you can go for a point-and-click solution where you can just go in our tool and select which tools you want and start them up and change the plan, upscale, downscale when needed, move between clouds with just a few clicks. But then we also give you the ability to use whatever you're using now in order to do exactly the same. Are you an advanced user of Terraform? Are you using infrastructure as code and storing everything in GitHub and then having an automatic pipeline to deploy things? We support that. Are you a terminal user that wants to use a CLI? Again, we have a solution for you. Do you want to build an out-of-the-box integration via REST APIs? And by the way, we have clients that basically are using Aiven, but they hide Aiven between another portal. And every time someone in the internal portal requests a Postgres instance, they will call Aiven with a REST API. So this, again, gives you all the abilities from going to the point-and-click solution in our console to basically hiding Aiven between your own website. You can get a service running in minutes. So it's just, you click, you select the tool, you select the cloud provider, you select the instance size, you give the service a name, and then in a couple of minutes, it's there for you to use.
Really terrific, really terrific. You know, I see time has expired, as I mentioned, but I know that there are folks that would be interested to learn more about Aiven, maybe get into a sandbox or begin to go hands-on with it. Can you recommend the next step that our attendees should take to learn more about Aiven and maybe even get a hands-on experience?
So all you need to do is, depending on your choice, really, either to book a demo with some of our experts that we have in-house, and they will be super happy, I'm sure, to showcase you all the demos or customize our demos in order to showcase how they adapt to your use case. Or on the other side, you can go wild yourself. Go to the QR code on the right. There you can start a free trial. We have $300 and 1 month free trial, and you can start spinning as many services as you want. You can start gluing things together as you wish. We also have what we call a free tier. We also have for MySQL, Postgres, and Redis, some small instances that you can always run for free without limits of time. So we give you the ability to explore, test, and evaluate our solution both at scale or with smaller instances. Up to you. And please let us know how it goes. If you need a little bit more time, if you want a little bit more assistance, we will be super happy to help you out.
Wow, this has been great. Francesco Tizian, staff developer advocate at Aiven. Thanks very much for joining us today, Francesco. It's been a great session.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was really a pleasure being here with you.
Our pleasure as well, for sure. And just a quick note to the attendees. Francesco mentioned several options for you to get started with Aiven. We have also got some other knowledge-based materials right here in the breakout room, right on the view screen. You'll see those blue links, including a copy of Francesco's great slides. And as you can tell, there is a lot of innovation going on at Aiven, and we've just scratched the surface. Here's a slide. It'll take you directly to the Aiven website. You can get more information directly here. Once you download the PDF version of the slides, all of these links will be live, so we invite you to explore deeper. And again, a thanks to Francesco for a great session and demo, and especially to the audience for some really excellent questions. Thanks again to everyone.